So good morning, and again, thanks for coming. Um, so I will be talking a bit, um, but before I do that, I'm actually really briefly going to ask Tess to share a photograph that I sent to her and just put it up on the screen so we can see it. So this is a creek behind my house. Sometimes it fills with water really high and becomes a rushing, roaring river. And sometimes, in dry season, it just trickles along. And I had the idea that I wanted to set up a little iPad so we could sit with this in meditation, you know, but it was too much to work out. So I still just wanted to show you the photo. And I'm going to say something about water. This is something we say in PZI when we have a ceremony of refuge, which is more than I'm going to go into now, but a sort of formal joining of the community and entering the way, committing to an entering of the way. Water, it has no attachments. When it meets an obstacle, it flows around it or under it or over it or through it. Water purifies the soul. It joins the ocean and rises again in the clouds. Water dissolves sorrow, nourishes plants and animals, and refreshes the earth. Water is blessing us this morning. So thank you, Tess. Goodbye, River. Thanks. So often we don't really notice all of the conditions that we're putting on a moment instead of just meeting whatever appears. And I was thinking of just a few things this morning. I jotted down, things like, I should feel relaxed and comfortable. I should be prepared for what's coming. Nobody should get hurt or die. What I care about should be defended. I'm a person. I'm a tree. Avoiding danger is wise. There is not enough time. This will end well. This will not end well. I should learn something. I need clarity. I need to be clear in order to fulfill my true purpose. I need something I don't have. All of those things are those are thoughts. And actually, I wasn't going to say this, but this came up, and I think so most of you know, PZI does a wonderful thing called the Open Temple. And most mornings, a lot of people gather together to meditate on a koan. In these days, there's a leader for each program, and they read the koan, and everyone sits with the koan, and often the leader shares a poem. Many of you people here do this. And I don't get to attend very much myself, but I feel it. I feel it through the people I talk with. And I think it's just wonderful. And they make an announcement. Tess sort of manages it all and makes an announcement and says, here's the koan for the week, and everybody takes it in and makes it their own when they host. So I recommend, if you don't do this, you can manage it. It's a membership benefit, but it's great. But so the koan for this week, I believe, I'm going to read it to you. It's called Prajnatara Turns the Wheel. This koan, Prajnatara, was supposedly Bodhidharma's teacher. And the koan goes, a king of eastern India invited the 27th ancestor, Prajnatara, to a vegetarian meal. Why don't you read from the sutras, he asked her. Prajnatara said, I'm a poor person of the way. When I breathe in, I don't live in the world my mind makes. And when I breathe out, I don't get caught up in the world of cause and effect. I'm always turning the wheel of the sutras, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 scrolls. Not getting caught up in the worlds our minds make. We're always chanting the sutras. So I'm going to tell you a little story from my life. So this past week, my sister and I got the idea that we would take my elderly father on a trip to the mountains. And he's almost 89 years old. He's got some definite cognitive issues, as well as physical issues, but he loves trains. And he just has really been wanting to do this. And we decided we'd take a chance and take him up there. And it was just a one-day trip, ride the train about 5 hours to Truckee, which is at about 6,000 feet, spend one day recuperating and ride the train back. So we were going to ride the train back on Friday. So this was this last week. And I was also then going to have lots of time to prepare for this program, on Saturday. And the trip went really, it was special. It was, if we really had this feeling of like, we didn't really know how anything was going to work. We didn't know. And so things were just arising to help us, just, it had a warm feeling, even with lots and lots of challenges. And, we got through it. Friday morning, we got up and, went to the train. I called Jordan from the train station, says, yeah, I'm going to get on the train. I'm going to be home in a little while. Looking forward to the program. And about 2 hours or so out from the train station, my sister and I, my father had gotten up to go use the restroom, and my sister and I were sitting at a table in the observation car where we'd been sitting for a while with my dad. And there were all kinds of other people in there, including this very loud table of women playing Yahtzee and having an absolutely fabulous time. And all of a sudden, we heard a thump. And then the energy in the car completely changed. And it was sort of gasps and things like that. And we thought, oh my God. And of course, it was my father who had fallen while walking back from the restroom. And this had not been in the plans. And it was interesting. I mean, basically, first, we just went over to him to see what had happened. And, sometimes when there's something that happens, it's a crisis and so out of the ordinary, it brings out things that you usually don't get to see. And turned out 2 of the Yahtzee playing women were nurses. So they came running over to help generously. People from the train brought gloves and things. Everybody was very concerned about the glove thing. It was like, I was trying to do things like, no, you have to wear gloves. And like, I can't open these packages. Anyway, but everyone was so generous and trying to keep my dad's spirits up, and he's lying on the ground. This is absolutely the last thing he wanted in all the world. He's bleeding. And it was a situation where you can imagine perhaps it crossing my mind and my sister's mind, why did we not go with him? All the things we anticipated, right? All the things, all the ways we'd been trying to protect him from himself for the whole trip. But this one, for whatever reason, we let him go by himself. And that's but we don't know. We don't know if we'd been with him, if it would have helped. We don't know why we let him go by himself. We don't know if maybe somehow there was a benefit to his falling. So it was one of those like, okay, doesn't seem like what we would have chosen, but it's what we got. And we don't need to fight with it, you know? And so this started this whole chain of events. You know, we didn't know who to call. People from the train, I guess they called, you know, this must have happened to them before, and they called the emergency medical people to meet us somewhere. This happened and we weren't right near a road or a town. So they actually had to reverse the train and go backwards to a town called Colfax. And then the emergency people came onto the train and they did an assessment, and they figured, well, my dad's on blood thinners, and so he hit his head, he better go to the hospital. So I was like, okay. So then we've got all the luggage, my sister's luggage, my dad's luggage. My dad's like, you know, recovered somewhat, the kind Yahtzee playing nurses who actually, they really wanted us to know these two of them, who one of them was a healthcare worker, one was a nurse. They had the same first name and the same middle name, but they were not related, and they'd been friends for 20 years. Anyway, and so, you know, my dad had ice on his cheek, and we'd gotten first aid, and, you know, there were these burly emergency medical people to take him off the train. But we did. It was like, we've got all this luggage. What are we going to do? So we get off and we go towards this ambulance, and they said, well, okay, he goes in the ambulance. They said where they're going to take him, made sure we knew where that was. And they're like, well, you should just Uber or something. So we're like, okay. And luckily, before they left, we tried to call an Uber, and it was not. It said there's no service in this area. You can't get one. You can't get a lift. And so we're like, whoa, people, hell, any ideas? And so they got together and they conferred, and they said, okay, well, we're not supposed to, but I guess we'll let you into the ambulance with us. So we loaded all the suitcases into the ambulance, and they had to put one of us with my dad and then one of us in the front. And one of the paramedic guys, he goes to my father, so which daughter is your favorite? which was another interesting thing about going, you know, my sister said, don't you say. But going through that another element of this whole experience was my relationship with my sister, right? And the navigating, control, who decides what, who goes where, who should talk to somebody and contact this person. Like, it's this subtle dynamic all the way, you know, all through the trip. Who helps dad here, who doesn't here, who whatever. And so that was an interesting aspect of it too. And it was, you know, so helpful to just, if I felt myself getting caught up in that sort of thing, just try, it doesn't, you know, what's needed here now, not for me or her, but what's needed here now. And I think she did the same. And, you know, the ability to do that may have just come from who knows where. But so even in the process, it was like really good for our relationship and really helpful, because we could work together as a team, and that felt really, really good. But anyway, so they put us on, you know, we got into the ambulance, and she was in the back and I was in the front looking up medical things about my dad that I couldn't remember, that I thought maybe they should know, on my laptop. And then I started talking to the driver, who was a relatively young guy, and we were making small talk, and he started, you know, he says, well, what do you do when you're not working? And, you know, I said something, and then I said, what about you? He says, well, you know, I like to go fishing, but it's better with my fiance. And he goes, I like to go on walks, but it's better with my fiance. And we're getting married soon, and I spend most of my time planning our wedding. And my fiance is the most wonderful person in the world, and I can't imagine not being with her. And it was just very, very cute and sweet, and part of the texture of the whole experience. And also was when we got off of the train. Like you could imagine people would be kind of pissed off. Okay, they're getting seriously delayed. And we'd already heard people going, why is this train going so slowly? I've had it. I've come from Missouri. I need to get off, you know. But once this happened, everybody was so um, incredibly kind, you know, and we felt it as we walked through the train, and all the people sitting there were, you know, just wishing us luck and emanating kindness. And that was really nice. Um, so anyway, I'm going to wrap this up, but I want to tell you a little. Um, so we got to the hospital, and we've got all this luggage, and we went in where the ambulance went in, and then it was like, no, there's rules. You guys can't go in here. But there was this woman who was doing security at the doorway. And at first she was like, well, no, you can't have luggage in the hospital. Of course, there's no lockers, and there's nothing to do with it. And you can't go in anywhere with all this luggage. You can't go to the trauma room. And it was though then like something just changed, something just shifted. And all of a sudden she wanted to help us, and she went and she got a wheelchair, and she said, just put all the luggage on the wheelchair, and I know they're supposed to inspect it over there, but I'll just look at it and don't worry about it, and I'll just sneak you in that way. And you know, everything, like the waters were just parting, and all these things like that. And I guess I want to say couple things about this. And then after they decided my dad would stay at the hospital, and so my sister's husband came up. He drove the 2.5 hours to come get us, and so we decided to have dinner before we went back to Berkeley. And we went into this restaurant, and everything about the experience in the train and the experience with my dad was with us in some way, and it impacted what happened there. And there was someone coming out with a wheelchair. And normally you would hold the door for someone with a wheelchair. But what I noticed inside of me was how much I wanted to help and make sure this person with the wheelchair could get through with no problems. And it felt like I had been receiving so much help. I wanted to give it back. Like my body wanted to. It wasn't a thought. It was just, and we went in to eat, and we got this crazy waitress who wanted to give us free food, and you know, just like there's more, you know. And it was just and so a few things I was thinking about this whole thing is how this wasn't just our story. Everything that happened there is also a part of the story of the Yahtzee playing women, and the ambulance guys, and the woman in the hospital, and everybody we encountered. And of course, you know, my dad. It there's no line between where it's something that happened to us and where it's something that happened to others. And there's no way we can possibly know the impact of it. Can we say that it's positive or not positive? You know, my dad's very old. I wish he hadn't fallen and been hurt, but he's not going to live forever. He really wanted to go on the trip. You know, it's just life, you know. And there's a lot of beauty and joy inside of it. And the next day I was totally exhausted, and I'll just say, but I realized at like 4 in the afternoon I hadn't eaten, and I went somewhere to get some food. And you know, I'd been going through these days where it was as though everything was rising to support me. And I get into this place, and I really felt like I needed to eat and get home. And there were massive numbers of people. They were having some kind of truffle ceremony. I don't know. And it was just jammed with people. And then there was a huge line to get food. And you take a number to order some food. So I took a number, and I thought it wasn't going to be too bad. And then all the workers disappeared. And they went into the back and I could hear them singing happy birthday. And I thought, and it was like funny. It was like this too. Like, I am never going to get this food and I'm never going to get out of here. And, but so I just thought, and in some piece of me, it was like, okay, I'm taking the ride. That's what's happening. And eventually someone came along to give me, give me my food, and I ordered my food. And normally you have to then go and stand in a really long line. And he looks at me and he goes, "Are you ready to check out?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Great, we're just going to go down there and do it." And it was like, quick, things are in the way, things are not in the way, things are in the way, things are not in the way. It's just each moment there's something new. And I guess what I want to say is, I think it's really helpful when we think this moment, whatever's happening, isn't wrong. It doesn't mean we don't have feelings, and it doesn't mean we don't try. We don't make plans. We don't do our best. But right in the moment, it is what it is. And we can't possibly know if it's good or bad, right or wrong. Those aren't helpful thoughts. And we have them, and that's okay too, but we don't have to fully believe them. Maybe it's a hypothesis, I think I'm going to read a very familiar poem by Rumi, and I'll say a little bit more later to get us into a meditation, so out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there. When the soul lies down in that grass, the world is too full to talk about. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Ideas, language, even the phrase each other doesn't make any sense. Another little thing I want to share before we hear from some other people. You probably know the artist and filmmaker David Lynch died not too long ago. And in response to that, a lot of people were sharing online various things, including an interview that was done between him, David Lynch, and Patti Smith about 10 years ago. And they talk about their creative process, and it's really great and interesting, and how each one of them has their own way to touch something larger than them and create art. But I just want to read a little bit from the end of their conversation. Patti says, well, David was talking about he likes things that he doesn't control, that have nature in them, not pretty, not so perfect, something really beautiful in that to him. And she says, I have a little house with a lawn, and I love when it's overgrown and there are dandelions and the weeds. One day I went away and a well-meaning neighbor mowed my lawn to make it perfect. And I came back and I was horrified. My wild roses, they trimmed them all back. They took the beautiful natural chaos of my yard and made it look like horrifying perfection. But I think in the end, I have a feeling we think the same way, in that neither one of us likes labels. What is beautiful or what's ugly? We don't have any answers for these questions because we don't want answers. Isn't that so? David says, yeah, we don't want to know. Patti says, yeah, we don't want to know the answers. We don't need them. We just need to do our work. And David says, exactly right. And I thought, yes, the Zen translation, we just need to do our practice, live our lives, not look for the answers. Unless we do. Tess, would you like to say anything?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Um, I guess one of the things I hear you saying today, Michelle, is it's so easy to think things are going right or wrong, right or well or not well or something like that, and we don't need no stinking answers, as David and Patty said. But my own feeling of that right now, I've been away for the last couple weeks, and the first week that I was away, it was very easy to feel like things were going right because I don't know, we loved our guide and where we were, and everything seemed to, be flowing in the same way that you were talking about. And then there came a turn. I started to get sick, and no, it started feeling like things were going differently. And it would be almost easy to say they were going wrong. The first night I could feel myself getting sick, I thought, no, 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 this is, but and then Thursday morning, we got news. We were supposed to be coming home today, but we got news that my old cat was taking a very bad turn. And so, what it felt like that was interesting was everything had started to converge on it was time to go home earlier than we expected. And some part of the mind could say, well, but that's ruining your vacation, or what about shouldn't you be seeing something, shouldn't you be, shouldn't you make good use of the last time before your flight, shouldn't you, but everything just turned, and there was a kind of integrity and tenderness and humility in honoring that turning. And when we got home yesterday morning, it was very clear that he's in very bad shape. And all comes this is such an interesting thing with animals, because with humans we don't usually have the option to say, well, should we end their suffering now or should we not? And with animals, this is a very dear question. I used to for many years I worked in a vet office, and this is like the koan of a lifetime. When is the right time that you might be able to? And I knew our vet was closing at 2 o'clock, and so there was this pressure, and I could just feel, no, it's not quite time. And so we've just been the last couple of days just companioning him, and he's having a pretty hard time, and we're having a pretty hard time. But there's a kind of sweetness and integrity, and it's not the mind that could say, well, it's going wrong because he's not feeling well, or it's going wrong because it hurts, or it's going well because it's like, as you say, none of that really helps. There's just really being in it. And there's something very deep and sweet and quiet about that I like. So thank you for being here, everybody.
Thank you, Tess. Yeah, I can feel that. It's interesting. We don't do that with people, but when someone is lucky enough to live into their late 80s or 90s and everything is falling apart, there's some kind of aspect of that question there for them too. And there's not really an answer. And I'm sorry about your kitty, but I wanted to just share, the ripples and the different levels of things as all those things happened, and Tess was called back from her vacation early to be with her cat, etc. That was sitting in my seat. It was like, oh, good, Tess will be here. This is Tess's account. My internet might go out. What will happen? Now I have Tess. I know, I feel supported. The universe arose. So sitting where she is, it was that story. And then sitting where I am, it's got a little of that other story. And the cat has the cat's experience, Tess's family, their experience is all, how can you say? John Joseph, would you like to say anything?
Yeah. I just really love that story about your dad, and it reminded me a lot about my dad. And for me, it was your story was a story of connection. You know, you had connection with your dad, and you had great connection with your sister and the nurses and the ambulance driver and the people in the hospital, the people in the restaurant, and this koan actually the coin uh, lost in the river and found in the river is it's actually one of my favorites, and it reminds me of my father. And the first thing that comes to mind was his great great uncle was a miner up in the gold country and found this big nugget, and it was in the family for a century and a half almost. And my father was living in the Delta and in a trailer, and somebody broke into his trailer and stole it, and so that that nugget was lost in the river again. And it made me think of my connection to my father and how impossible to do the kind of trip that you did with him with my father, because it would have been not only a physical challenge, but just the emotional challenge. And the contrast that I had, my daughter just visited, and she borrowed my truck, my old truck, and she moved a couch and then stayed for. We went out to dinner, three of us with my wife, and then we saw a stupid movie together, Fast and Furious One, um, and just the connection that we had. And she got up late this morning, and I made her breakfast, which is one of my favorite things to do, and it just made me feel the connection, that you have with your father and how lovely it is. And you don't have to explain it.
Right. Even, thank you, John. Even in that, though, you can see the um, connection with my father is very complicated, and you don't know what that is. So it's something about you that sees that in others too. That tells you something about you more than about me. But your love of connection and family.
And the connection, even with my father, is connection, but it's complicated, like you said. Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you. Thanks. Hey, Jesse Carden, would you like to say anything? Yes.
Sure. Yes. This is really helpful. Maybe I can say that. Thank you. There's something about the way that today you've brought in all these different images. I thought I was sitting with one koan, and then we'd be meditating along, and then you'd throw in, "Who are you?" And then, "Oh," and then it's almost like being worked on, having a massage therapist work on you here and there and the other place. And yeah, it's really interesting to be kind of opened in all these directions at once. So thank you for that. Um, and yeah, I think you picked the right koan for my life right now. I think there's a lot that comes up, and I'll try to edit it a bit. But when we moved to Hawaii a year and a half ago, we kind of moved with all this. We made all these promises to ourselves about, we're going to move to this beautiful place, and it's my home, and life is going to be so much better because there are all these things here. And then we moved here, and we basically did the same thing we've done everywhere else, which is we went back to our little lives. And me particularly, I can just get so focused in on a couple of things to the exclusion of what's out there. And my son is like a master at drawing me out into life, right? Because he doesn't want to stay home. He always wants to go outside and see people and do things and have adventures. And usually my response to that is, "Oh, can't we just stay home and rest or do something quietly?" And so we went to a kids fishing tournament yesterday, which was really adorable. It was all completely free. They gave them these little bamboo poles and a little bucket with a jumbo shrimp in it for bait. And there were like, 200 kids of all different ages along the rocks, all fishing into the ocean. It was all catch and release stuff. And I just had such a great time. And he had such a great time. And who knew? I'm in Hawaii and there's a beach 30 minutes away that's beautiful and full of fish that we can go and hang out in the tide pools. And I'm just sitting here this morning going, God, why am I not doing more of this stuff? I'm so focused on finding whatever coin it is that I'm focused on at this moment, that there's so much life out there that's just like, it's just waiting for me to come and I don't know, claim it isn't, maybe, I don't know if it's the word, but I really have that feeling. And so thank you. This helped to open that outward for me.
Thanks, Jesse. I think just one step is good too. That tends to, I'm not doing enough. I went and I had a great time with my son and now I should do it all the time. And why am I not doing it more? And you did it, So thanks. Another Sunday, not too long ago, I heard Angela Raquel, who I think is here, shared something about having been in a fire when she was young. When you were young, I don't know. And thinking initially that, she was okay with it and kind of feeling, oh, good, she'd achieved a certain level of detachment. And only later came to see something deeper underneath about what she loved, about what she lost. I was really touched by that. So, and I just wondered, Angela, do you have anything else that you'd like to share today?
Thanks, Michelle. I've just been finding what you said today very helpful and moving. Just in so vividly giving the experience of the river in its complexity. All those strands, in the examples you gave of your experience of preparing to speak today, and Tessa's experience of her involvement today, and so on. And so just a feeling of that everything at onceness of the river is wonderful. And somehow just feeling that all of us here today. So what I'm hearing in my little room in the temple is the friend who lives here practicing in the hall of the Mountain King on the trumpet, and a family of green parrots. In Australia, we call it hooning, yahooing through the garden. And just knowing that each window in the temple has got its own equivalent of that happening, and all of it is the river. And so thank you for bringing that to us.
Thank you. Thank you, Angela.